Yeah. Welcome, everybody. As you can see, I'm not used to Zoom anymore. I'm only on the Teams environment. So welcome to this meeting on the EconTEAching chats organized by CITEL. And we are happy to have all of you today here. We are waiting for one of our panelists, Alvin Birdie, who just kind of emailed me, said, I'm on my way, I'm running. So that's fine. I'm here with Claudia Jenkins, who's one of our co-organizers. Well, with all of you. So I'm really happy to have this meeting on navigating the mid-careers plateau in economics, education careers. So a minute of background for the, oh, by the way, the meeting is recorded, so you know how it works. You are happy. I'm really happy to see your cameras on, but if you are not happy with your being capturing camera, feel free to put your camera off. But other than that, really nice to see you. So the mid-careers plateau, as we call it, is, I guess we all are growing up in a way. A lot of people, a lot of you are here. And something that we have noticed in doing this is that there is almost a lot of support when you start the career. You have all the early workshops, all the mentoring, all the things, and you realize then suddenly your career completely changes at some point. You take more roles, your duties change. So there is a lot of changes happening. But at some point, it feels that there is less support. I think kind of something, oh, and Alvin is here. No worries, Alvin, we just started. We kind of started a couple of minutes late, just so I'm introducing the session. So we are just here. So yeah, I was just saying how kind of there is all this support when you start in early careers, but then suddenly mid-careers feels like, you know, you have to be an adult, you have to do it yourself. When we talk about education pathways, we know that education pathways almost are not, let's say not new completely, but it's still newer than the well-established kind of balance or research pathways, depending how you call it to university. So hence kind of this event. And I think from now, there are going to be a series of events focusing on mid-career. I'm going to tell you more about this later today. But we are today so happy to have Professor Alvin Birdie from the Economics Network, and of course, Professor of Economics Education at the University of Bristol. I might dare to say one of the oldest professors, not by age, but by period in economics education.
And by age, probably, Steffi.
I don't know that, but definitely by experience. Then here, we also have Gosia Mitker, who is senior lecturer and also vice dean of engagement, partnership, and social responsibility at St. Andrews University. So we just talk about how north it is. And we also have Professor Daniela Tavashis, professor at Queen Mary University, Principal Fellow of the Higher Education Academy, and also Director of Global Engagement at the School of Economics and Finance at Queen Mary. So we have kind of a broad set of panelists, and this is kind of a conversation. So, you know, if you are new to the CITEL seminars, this usually is quite an informal chat that we have with the panelists. I will start asking some questions, but then it is open. So if you want to put your questions in the chat, and then, or at some point you want to raise your hand, we are happy to take any questions. So let me start with Alvin. And of course, Alvin, if you know Alvin, has been director of the Economics Network for quite a while now, 12 years, a bit longer. So, and if you are familiar with Economics Network, it's one of the few networks that started very early, etc., supporting economics educators. And, you know, you have seen the evolution, let's say, of these careers, Alvin, and across all these years. I remember when I started, I worked at Bristol, and it was very new. I was so happy to have people like Alvin. Well, at the time, there was also a few others at Bristol who supported and showed me the path in this career. Otherwise, I couldn't see. But Alvin, so can I ask you, what do you see as the most positive developments in the recent years in this career pathway? And looking ahead, how do you think the pathway will evolve in coming years?
Okay, thanks, Steffi. And apologies for coming late. I was teaching and then had to run across the campus and didn't realize that it was already that late. So let me just say three things then about what I see as the most positive developments. Steffi's right. I got involved in this pathway way back in around, it was before 2012, I think, but 2012 is important. And I think the most positive development is probably the rise of the formal career pathway in many universities, which just didn't exist at that time. In the past, many of you will remember that teaching fellows were often just brought in as junior help for large cohorts, or they were academics that had been moved away from the research pathway because of ref strategy. And so the most positive evolution, I think, is now that there's a deliberate career track in many universities. And it's worth saying, actually, that the post-92 universities always had staff that were very kind of invested in teaching careers. And other universities, notably the Russell Group universities, now have many of them have a formal career structure for teaching academics. I think the downside is that it's not always that well understood, or it's not always that consistently applied across institutions, particularly what counts as evidence of impact or evidence of excellence. And that makes it hard, I think, for people to negotiate this career to the extent that it's not that obvious what you need to do to get on or what you need to do to move to another institution. And so the development of a consistent labor market, I think, we haven't yet seen, although people are moving around in this pathway and doing quite well, and that's quite recent and very positive. Second thing I'd say is that the importance of evidence-based pedagogy has really come into its own. And, way back then, it was no one really paid it that much attention except for a handful of people in the Economics Network, I think, that really cared about this stuff. There's now multiple conferences and outlets for dissemination. There's the D conference, which is our own Economics Network one. There's CTAIL's Teaching Conference, if I've got that right, which is an online conference. And there's CTRI, which is the big American Economic Association one, which also started during this period. There's the Southern Economic Association, which has become pretty important. There are committees like the EEA Teaching Committee, and Claude is the current chair of that. We have a committee in the Royal Economic Society, which is based around education and teaching as well. There's multiple places for educational specialists now in economics to publish. There's IRE, which is the Economics Network Journal, the Journal of Economic Literature, which is the AEA Journal. There's recent ones like the Journal of Economic Teaching, which is much more practice-based. So I think we're making some impact on what counts as evidence in this area and raising the profile of some kinds of methods of researching as well, mixed methods researching, which many of us have got from education. From education subjects rather than from economics. And then finally, I'll just mention the continuous rise of and development of networks. And I would say this, of course, because I direct the Economics Network, but the establishment of, there weren't many of us back in 2012 involved in the network, and now we've got solid networks. I think we've got the rise of regional networks affiliated in some cases to the Economics Network as well. Obviously, we've got CTAIL, who I've mentioned. There's the C-Tree community, which is really sort of building, and the rise of mentoring. And I think that's a great thing, So this pathway is strengthened a lot by the fact that there's a lot of people now who are there who can mentor early career staff. Just a very, very quick note then on how this will evolve. That's a much harder question, I think. I think it will mature further into more universities. It's still relatively young, I think, as a pathway. I'd date it to about just over a decade, really. We definitely need more professors and associate professors to lead this space. It's good that we're building that group of people. We're doing really well, actually, on diversity, I think, compared to the research pathway across a whole number of different dimensions. I think we're going to need to continue the fight for equal status. That's not fully established yet. I think that's probably a general reflection on the status of research versus teaching in our sector and in our subject more generally. And then a couple of final things. There's a question of value, I think, which we need to really bottom out. What is the value of this pathway? What does it contribute to the space in education? And to a certain extent, we don't yet have reliable metrics to be able to demonstrate this in the same way that there are accepted metrics on the research side of the house. We also have a problem with really understanding or having a generally broadly agreed understanding of what excellence in scholarship is. And that's a barrier currently to the development of the pathway. So I'm hopeful that that will start to become a lot easier to think about and to articulate. And then finally, I think there's still a problem which I hope as the pathway evolves will start to become sorted out, which is I think there's still a fragility problem, which some of us found in some research we did on the teaching track quite recently, that many people on this track don't feel a strong sense of security in the pathway and feel that their position is a little bit dependent on whoever happens to be the head of department at a particular time. Let me finish there, Steffi. I'll pass back to you.
You're muted.
Thank you very much, Alvin. I think like in those 3 points in general, there's a lot to kind of think about, but we will come back to that. In the general discussion, let me then now go to Gosia. And I think a lot of the things that you were saying links to that. In addition, something that we have seen is a lot of colleagues in the education pathway are taking important roles. So in fact, I'm going to ask this question to Gosia, but I can see many of you have kind of various roles within your departments. As I say, you are Vice Dean of Engagement, Partnership, and Social Responsibility with your department. So a very important managerial role in there. So Gosia, something that came out talking to colleagues in mid-career is actually the difficulty of balancing teaching. Some of them still trying to do a lot of research in their fields. I think it's linked to what Alvin was saying, this kind of lack of sense of security. So kind of trying to ensure that, the departments are happy on that. And, and all these roles. And so kind of, this is a very difficult question, but do you have any strategies that you find effective in managing all these duties? And whether they work personally for you, but also do you have any sort of recommendations or any ideas of what can be done at an institutional level to support these pathways?
Yes, thank you. That is an excellent question, a question that I think about pretty much all the time. I myself, I'm not perfect and I don't have it all figured out, but I think I have with the help of economic concepts, general sense, and some sort of reflection on my own values, found the sort of 3 strategies that I would like to share today. So the bad news is that I don't have it figured out, but the good news is that we are economists here, so we can use some economic concepts to kind of help ourselves in that. Because I think we are in the business of trying to allocate scarce resources such as time and effort to satisfy unlimited needs, such as need of our students, leadership, and our own needs in the whole process. So sounds like the challenge of a life of a mid-career economist is actually an economic problem. So before I go to those strategies, the first thing that I would like to say, though, is that we can't do strategies without having a big vision. So I would really recommend everyone to start with a big vision. What is it that you're trying to accomplish and achieve in this role, and have an absolute clarity of that, but because this is going to be your compass. And only that you can move on to those strategies. And the first strategy or recommendation is don't try to do it all well. It's pretty much impossible. And with the specific on well, I don't want to be pessimistic, but we are balancing a lot. We are trying to balance teaching, leadership, admin responsibilities. We have limited time, limited energy, and in those roles, often also limited patience. But it looks like we are kind of optimizing an objective function subject to constraints. So we are in the business of constrained optimization. And I think for me, this was a big eye-opener. For a long time, I thought my optimization is unconstrained, but no, you keep hitting walls, and you need to take this into consideration. But to a certain extent, you are in control of the functional form of your objective function. So, we can place different ways on different variables. You can choose your parameters. So for that, I would recommend to align it with your values, with your own priorities. So don't lose yourself in this equation. Know what's important for you. And the one other concept that helped me as well is to figure out, using the sufficient and necessary conditions for the optimum, is to figure out minimum sufficiency. So what does good enough look like? And then going with that. It doesn't have to be perfect. It will be impossible to do everything to the best of our abilities. And I know it's an extreme challenge for us as academics, because we are in the business of academic excellence, excellent student experience. So we always strive for the best, but define it for yourself. Or for me, it was actually a challenge, because I usually want to over deliver, and perfectionism is a bit of a problem that I have. So if this works for you, ask your line manager and then define it with them, and then just stick to it. It will be uncomfortable and a little bit disappointing, but you have to be realistic, so you don't try to do it all well. The second strategy is don't try to do it well all the time. So this leads me to the concept of intertemporal optimization. So you will need to be able to prioritize different things at different point of time. So there will be a series of sprints, but you need to recognize that you are in this for the long game. So it needs to be sustainable. Again, insert your values, your own priorities, and decide accordingly. And respect yourself in the process. So use some sort of concept of macroprudential policy where you build in buffers. For me, a big challenge was to take leave and time to recharge without feeling guilty and without the fear of coming back to this huge inbox or multiple inboxes that I actually manage. In the absence of administrative support, that is often the case in those roles. But you need to be disciplined. One of my best friends, she's a dentist, and she told me, think about it like you're running a dental practice. You have limited number of doctors, you have limited number of appointments you can schedule on a day, and they don't work during the weekends. So you've got to know this number. And for us, this number is our contract, and that's how much we are paid for. And I'm not aware of anyone being paid for extra hours. So unless we are, just think about it. Think like a macroeconomist, plan well, plan over long-term horizon, use your contract as a constraint, use the number of days that you have to recharge your batteries, respect that, respect yourself to avoid burnout. And the third strategy is about don't try to do it well on your own, because again, it's impossible. So find your allies, invest time in building relationships and building the coalition of the willing. These roles often don't come with managerial responsibilities, and that's another challenge. Because you can't effectively go to someone and ask, could you please do this? Or would you like to do this? So it's a coalition of the willing. It doesn't come with administrative support. So you're in charge of your calendar. That becomes a Tetris game. You need to book your travel, claim receipts, do minutes, agendas, read 200 pages of papers. No one will write a briefing for you. So the list goes on. So you need to find people and work with them as much as you can. This is the concept of specialization and labor division, simply for efficiency gains. And that comes actually with a very nice bonus. And the bonus is that your work will be very enjoyable if you work with others. You will benefit from the power of diversity of views and different ways of doing things. So try to be as collaborative as you can. In this way, you will also offer an opportunity to others to develop themselves. But be careful with that, because you don't have managerial responsibility. And unless it aligns with the personal priorities of these other people, you may end up doing this job yourself. So be careful. My absolute favorite is building unconventional relationships, so seeking for colleagues from other schools outside of academia, colleagues from professional services, working with people from other institutions. That's really a very, very energizing for me. So don't try to do it all well, all at the same time, and don't do it alone. Which brings me to some institutional recommendations. So I think there is an absolute need for these roles to be more supported in terms of administrative support. So it is not a good use of our resource, of our effort and time, if we have to do a lot of all those different things that could be supported. The second one is about very strong support from the top. We need senior leadership commitment and top level support, because we are often very invisible in our roles. And we don't have this managerial responsibility. So to get things done, it's really good to be supported from the top. I would like universities to reward collaboration more, rather than this kind of glorifying egos and rewarding individuals. So giving more collaborative awards and rewarding collaboration would be another suggestion. And then setting achievable expectations, especially when it comes to promotions criteria. Because often we are being hired for being excellent teachers, but that is not enough for promotion. We have to go above and beyond, and that is really really challenging. I've got two more. One is related to what Alvin was talking about, the role of role models and the senior academics. Very often we've got a lot of junior academics, entry-level, very precarious contracts when colleagues join, and as soon as they join, they have to look for another job. And that is not the best practice. So hiring senior level education-focused academics from other institutions would be a good practice. And the last but not least, building time and space for creativity and innovation. We are often very busy firefighting and doing things, being in fight or flight, and we don't have time for blue sky thinking or this kind of big projects. So that is very challenging. And I also have a couple of tactics, but since I've been asked about strategies, I can save them for later.
Thank you very much, Gosia. And I think I love the fact that you managed to link all these to economic terms. I think at least we speak the same language in here. And yeah, so I think your point particularly, and don't try to do it well, but especially don't try to do it alone. I think the best part I found in this job has been the community. And I look at around this kind of a screen and say, like, the friendships and things that I have. I think that's the thing that kept me going. But thank you very much. So let's now go to Daniela, because you were also talking about the issues that Gosia was talking about, becoming a professor and all these kind of things. And of course, Daniela, not just actually, now has been 2 years since you've been promoted to professor. You have been, you navigated all the promotion pathway, but also you have been more recently, again, I think like years have passed, but being promoted to principals, you apply for principal fellow of the Higher Education Academy. So you have gone through all this process. And well, we know that because of what Albin was saying, like there is not a well-defined pathway. All our pathways might be slightly different. Do you mind just sharing kind of some of your experience in navigating through the pathway, and anything particular that surprised you about the process to either for promotion or for applying for professional recognition? And if there is anything that you wish you knew earlier in the process?
I like this question, what you wish you knew earlier. Thanks, Steffi. Gosia, you are incredible. You touched to so many points that I have my notes on in common. So can I start from the end, Stefania? So what I would have liked to know when I decided that, I was going to become a professor on this pathway. So first of all, we are all different. So if we speak in economics terms, there is no model that fits all. This is absolutely essential. I'm also a mentor for principal fellows, and this is very important. People ask for examples but that you need to understand the grid and the level of abstraction that you need to gather from these applications rather than trying to replicate. So this is absolutely essential. My first point is I would have liked to have somebody mentoring me and telling me, don't forget your rights. Because I'm putting it so strongly, because very often we are overworked to an extent that we really forget ourselves. Come on, believe it or not, we are 2025 and still your sexual orientation, your gender matters, okay, in your career. Shockingly enough, but this is the plain truth. So do not forget yourself, just to reiterate what Gosia was saying. And, you know, if people try to, you know, forget that you have basic rights, just remind them. Very nicely, but just, you know, keep reminding them. So that's one thing. The second thing is find a gap in your organization. Find something you like. Find something you really are passionate about, shape it to yourself and go there. Make your job title, make your role. Design your role the way you like it, and then go and propose it over and over and over again. So that's how I got my role as global engagement. The school was completely, they kept separated undergraduate and postgraduate since 10 years ago, because there was a risk management strategy. If anything happens in one of the sectors, it's insulated, fine, but that doesn't matter with global engagement. When I'm on the other side of the world, people don't care. I'm QMUL, whether I'm a specialist in UG or PG. So make, you know, sure that you realize where the gap is, design your role within that, and go for it. Now, the enablers, I call it enablers because you call it tactic. The enablers. The thing that surprised me, Stephanie, I haven't forgotten about this part of the question, is how useful leadership courses might be. I know we talked about in the past, Stephanie, about some well-known leadership courses. You'll be surprised. Not so much because you learn to lead, but because of the network, because you get into a room with a bunch of other people and it's incredible how some experiences are shared, and that empowers you. That is an incredible energy booster. The fact that, you know, I personally have done a women program, well known, and I found, you know, so much in common that you know, we realized that there were 6 of us from Queen Mary, and we shared our experience. We went back to Queen Mary and we said, well, you empowered us. Now you take it back. There is X, Y, and Z that you need to change. And you do need to change it, because as it is, it doesn't work. And we managed. But because there was this network, this commonalities, this shared experience that made a lot of sense. And then another enabler that is very, very important is, Gosia touched on that, I call it differently. And it's, if you don't find somebody to work with in your department, go to the university, go outside. I have done, you know, grants with other people. I managed to go, we are separated at Queen Mary. We have this strange agreement that there is a School of Economics and Finance and a School of Business. I have more friends in the School of Business than in the School of Economics and Finance. That's how, you know, that's how it happened. And then we managed to, you know, get positions, more junior people who I pushed for, who are now within the School of Economics and Finance. So my network within the school also expanded. But that was a game changer. Now I call that tactic Berant. Why am I calling it Berant? I don't know if you know the story about we are going on a Berant. It's I can put the link in the chat later on. But the idea is that if you can, Claudia is laughing. If you can't go over it, if you can't go under it, you have to go through it, right? Well, let me tell you, I've gone all the ways, over, behind the shoulders, below, around. I've tried it all, okay? So I adapt my strategy depending on if there is somebody I can't talk to because, you know, it's a waste of time, then I'm going, you know, above and I'm going to talk directly to the VP. I have no issues. And you know why I do that? Because it's evidence-based. What I say, it's evidence-based. So I'm going back to what Alvin was talking about. And we are a generation that has been trained in education. Alvin, you have done a good job in that respect, no? Which is not just, okay, this work, try. No, but we are more empowered by the evidence. So if I go and say, I don't know, the awarding gaps are higher if we don't do assessment diversification. I'm just making it up at the moment, right? That's hard evidence numbers, which you can't say it's not. And I'm giving you a strategy, which is also efficiency in terms of resources. You got to listen to me. There's no other way, okay? So the strategy of going each way, as long as you know you're right, it's absolutely essential. And it's essential in networking, in, you know, working with others. And it's essential in convincing your colleague that, you know, there is a way out for that problem. Yeah, pretty much I have been networking more recently. I had to learn to do that. And the other thing is, yeah, shoot for the star. Is it the stars? Is it a good way to say that? So for instance, I was very scared about applying for grants. Last week I sent an email on behalf of myself and other 3 colleagues we are working on something. And to convince my head of the department, I had to tell him the 4 of us have won more grants than 85% of the department. So how does that sound? Okay. And I actually stole that from somebody working on the business school at Middlesex, who had been promoted as professor because she demonstrated excellence through external points. Grants is one of these. Okay, if I win more grants than 85% of the department, you got to listen to me, right? So this is an example. Similarly, principal fellowships. Guys, if your university is aligned, Queen Mary is aligned, okay? So if you are principal fellow, they will have to make a case not to promote you. It's the other way around because it's a very big deal. The principal fellowship is doable. It's not something crazy. It takes time, but there are strategies to do that. I think we have organized with the Economics Network something towards the principal fellowship. Go out there. I mean, I realized that by the time you are in mid-career, so many super ego researchers must have made you feel, you know,
100%.
not at their level, talking about, you know, equality of status. But that's, you know, it's not true, right? So, you know, go for it. And if you come, ask for help. There are people out there who can actually support you. And last but not least, when we talk about equality of status, I would like to emphasize, to give a twist to that. When I talk to my colleagues who are star researchers in their own field, I respect their knowledge in their own field. By equality of standards, I mean that I would like to have equal respect for what is my field. I know this meeting is recorded, but believe it or not, I had to talk about a wording gap in 2 meetings 2 weeks ago. And a bunch of colleagues were like, what? They had never heard of it. And it's one of the KPIs of both Queen Mary and the faculty. So everybody has their own expertise. We got to respect ourselves. This is the other side of the coin of respecting yourself. You are an expert in what you do. Might be a wording gap, might be something else, but you are an expert. So take the leadership in what you are an expert in.
Thank you very much, Daniela. And that brings us very well to kind of open the floor for a lot of discussion. Thank you very much to the three of you. I think there have been few things that come across. Something very strong that comes is the importance of networking, because, and I think it's important because now, while these roles are increasing, it's not, doesn't necessarily mean that we have as many in the room sometimes in the department. So kind of ensuring that you join. And I see in the chat there has been, remember that there is the different communities of practice around by CTEL in specific topics. If you are interested, there is of course the regional networks now that are organizing various meetings. My colleagues from Southampton had to leave now because there is another meeting happening, but we have the one, the Swedes, there is the Bees in Birmingham, there is a one in the north as well. So join and make use of these networks, because that's very useful. If not, nothing else, to kind of share the common issues that we find together. But all this said, sorry, I haven't, there's a lot in the chat, but unless there is a proper question in the chat, does anyone feel brave enough to raise your hand and ask any questions? Or we have a question from Ortenka. It says, what would you recommend to colleagues who have been in teaching fellow positions for a long period? Don't know whether anyone wants to take that particular. Perhaps Alvin, do you want to help with that?
So I think I think one of the key things is it partly depends on what the promotions framework and career structure is like in your institution, and obviously they do vary a lot. But one of the things I wish I'd known much earlier was just the importance of keeping track of the things that you're doing. And, you know, even things like student feedback and anything that you write, any kind of presentations that you make, because you know, I ended up doing a lot of stuff and just forgetting that, you know, I'd kind of update my CV on a year or 2 yearly basis, and I'd just kind of forgotten half the stuff. And then when I did remember it, I just couldn't kind of find the evidence for it. So one thing is, so that's one thing, just make sure that you know, I tell my students this as well, you know, one of the things that comes very unnaturally to people is to talk about themselves and what they do and how, you know, why they're good and they should be listened to. It's not a natural kind of thing to do because it sounds like bragging, but it's one of those things you have to kind of get used to, is making a sort of evidence-based case for what you're doing. The other thing I would say is, and you know, teaching fellow, that probably goes then to senior teaching fellow, depending on the career structure, and then you know, associate professor and upwards. At some stage, it's really important. I mean, you know, Clodagh was talking about what careers tutor, and you know, it's quite important to think about what it is that you're interested in, and where you think that you would like to get known and make a mark in, because I think especially when you get to slightly higher positions, that's the thing that really makes the difference. You know, people are looking for you know, well, what has this person done? What is this person known for? Why would people go to this person for their expertise? What is that expertise and how would you define it? And you know, it could be a whole variety. One of the benefits of being on the teaching track is there's a lot more things that you can choose. You know, it doesn't just have to be like flipping or something kind of quite academic. It could be, as you know, Clodagh's was careers. It could be widening participation. It could be there's a whole variety of things which are important in the space of A, economics education, and B, education, widening participation, admissions more generally. And I think it's quite that, and you know, I have colleagues here who've started to become known for the work they're doing around employability and skills in the curriculum, and you know, so getting a clear sort of vision about what that is, I think, is something really important. I think Clodagh's got hands up.
Oh, Clodagh.
Yeah, I do have a question. I'm not going to comment on everything. I was just wondering if people think that we focus a bit too much on being economics teaching career rather than teaching track career, because so we have a lot to learn from colleagues in other disciplines, but also I think, as Daniela suggesting, we bring a lot of evidence-based. And I wonder if any of the panel have any thoughts on how we can maybe amplify our engagement with people from outside our discipline, within our institutions, but maybe cross-institutionally as well.
Thank you, Claudia. Gosia, I think you want to have a go at that one.
Yes, thank you. And that actually links to the previous question as well. I think we sometimes limit ourselves, no one else limits us but us ourselves, by the kind of label that we carry with the teaching or education focused job. I would say never limit yourself by your job description. Think what it is that you can contribute, and consider first getting on different projects within your school or department, but then look outside, look at university level committees. For me, I was hired on a temporary teaching fellow contract that's been I then had to apply for a senior teaching fellow, and then I applied to be a deputy director of teaching. And this way I kind of joined some university level committees. And then the piece of advice I have is don't care what other people say, because people, like, we are making our own path as we walk. Like, we are often pioneers, so they have never seen things like this before. So this is not their well-established track and experience. So they mean well, but sometimes they say some things like, I applied for an associate dean role way before I became an associate dean. And everyone said, you're too junior. What do you think? Who do you think you are? You're on a teaching contract. No one is going to take you seriously. But guess what? I was invited for the interview. In the process, I learned a lot about the university. In the process, like Daniela said, I met the VPs, those important people who make decisions, and made myself visible to them. And through my answers in the interview, they actually realized, oh, okay, this is how she thinks. She has some important skills. I was working in industry before. So for me, I brought that into my role. And then 2 years later, I actually applied for another associate dean role and got it. And then again, I was in touch with colleagues who said, like, oh, I don't think you should apply. In fact, I was a lecturer at that time, and they wouldn't invite people lower than senior lecturer. But then someone emailed and said, I think this should be removed. So see, try to break those barriers. And this has been removed, and I have applied and I got this job. And then I was leading a university-wide strategy on entrepreneurial education because of my industry experience. So you never know what is going to be your superpower and when you're going to need it. And I think with that is this one thing, if I knew earlier, or think I would tell myself 5 or 10 years ago, these roles that I'm having now did not exist. The business school did not exist. St. Andrews Innovation that I'm sitting on the board did not exist. And I had different dreams. And someone told me, you just have to change your dreams. To me, it sounded like abandon my dreams. But I think the message that I would tell myself is have the courage to let go of your old dreams that no longer serve you, and embark on the future that you have never imagined because it did not exist. So it's about, I would say, being entrepreneurial. So spotting opportunities and then taking advantage of them, and then having the courage to pivot, because you need to be adaptable, you need to be agile, and you need to keep constantly redefining yourself in this career to capitalize on those opportunities.
Thank you very much, Gosia. I really love all what you said. And I think, like, never limit yourself by work description is something that we should all take out, especially in a career pathway that we all have different titles and different names. Just because the universities have not agreed on one individual one, why do we have to stick to what we have been given and not just make our own? Daniela, do you want to add anything to that, either to what Alvin said or Gosia said, either before to the two questions that we have had so far?
I very much share the idea of being an entrepreneur and making your own fate, no, if you like. The other thing that it's essential, and I think the risk with this pathway is that mid-career people feel, especially as the sector is in a crisis in terms of student recruitment, that people feel a little bit passive. But I mean, what Gosia was just describing is what I would call the golden rule, no? And it does go hand in hand with what Alvin is talking about. So it's about the identity, no? I remember somebody, my only mentor actually, when I had to write the application for promotion, they told me, you got to start with your identity, who you are, no? And that goes with redefine your dreams on the one end, but also what Alvin is talking about. So make yourself known for what your contribution is. So find what you like. And again, we go back to what I was saying, find the gap, find what you like, redefine yourself. I do realize that it's easy to say than, actually do, but that's where mentoring comes in then, reach out to people you think you can trust, share with them. And that's also, the leadership course. It's give yourself the time to think. This is, I think, something that we haven't touched before, but because we are always firefighting, we don't have the time for ourselves. We don't have the time to sit down and say, okay, what have I done so far? Where am I going? What is that? And that's another thing that actually the leadership course gives to you. This 1 day a month for 6 months, and you come the other side saying, oh, hold on, I have had some what we call reflection, no? The reflection that we keep being told when we apply for the various fellowship. Put it to yourself and to your career. Where am I going? What I'm doing? And to go back to the bare ant, I very recently I was talking about this with my mentee, and he said, you do realize, Daniela, that in the end they had to run away? I said, yeah, I do. So if worst case scenario, and that's to the teaching fellow, there is another job, there is another institution. You can't, this is all part of the, Stefania, you had an experience like that, no? At some point you left, went somewhere else. That is also part of the golden rule. But yeah, no, identity and redefining your dreams and being known for your expertise. In this sense, identity are two things that do go hand in hand, and make space and time to work on that.
I think that's some very good points, Daniela. I do realize that it's not feasible for everybody. So being able to move institutions, I have realized that it's a luxury. Unfortunately, not everybody can do it for personal reasons or something. But if you do have the opportunity, and the only reason that you are not doing it is because maybe you are scared of a new institution, I think my best advice is to it, because even for the simple reason that you just learn how a completely different place works. Of course, you expand your network and everything, and just understanding how different institutions work, I think has really helped me. And also because kind of suddenly you have very cheap takeaways, because it's like, oh, that in my other institution, we used to do this like this way. And suddenly, oh my gosh, that's like, we never thought about it. So you bring that knowledge, it kind of becomes a little bit cheaper to transmit it from one side or another. But I do realize that that's not possible for everybody.
Yes.
And there is a question as well that Claudia has kindly replied, but it's kind of this idea of what you end up publishing. Where do you publish? What should you focus on? Whether is it better to publish on educational journals or on discipline journals? And Claudia said, check what is required in your university, because as the pathways work, this is completely different, and this is going to be interpreted different in different universities. But again, to the panel, do you have anything else to say on this topic, or anyone for that matter?
Steffi, could I just make one point about publication, which I think is I think it's important. I don't know what others think about this, but you know, there is a tradition in economics for sole publication or joint publication. But if you look at sciences and medicine and a lot of STEM subjects, you find people publish in teams. And I think in the field of education, and this is why I think the networks are so important, and the regional networks and the communities of practice and so on that we've been talking about. One of the, I think one of the really useful bits of advice would be to try and join up with other people in teams and think about projects, because not only is that permissible, because we're not talking about economics disciplinary research where it's not the culture, but also it means you get better sample sizes. You know, you can compare across universities. It's just much more enjoyable as well. Anyone who has worked in sort of teams like that. So I would say, you know, get involved in these networks. There's lots of them around now, and try and form sort of areas of common interest and think about publishing together. It doesn't answer your question, but it's related.
Can I suggest something though? There is one link that is often missed between joining these networks, or whatever network that, you know, leads to publishing, or to, you know, projects that have a certain weight that you can use. And the culture of the fellowship for those, especially for those institutions where the fellowships are aligned with different level, no? Where the fellowship applications requires you to say I. So if you write we, it's like a no, right? Reshape everything in your mind. If you're part of a team, that means that you have a role in the team, okay? So you can combine the two things very easily. So you say, I was part of a team which won XYZ grant. My role within that will be the very next sentence. My role within that has been XYZ. So you solved it very easily. I know I said just 2 sentences, but that is really a terrible headache for a number of people, especially in institutions which have the tradition of collegial work. The case is, for instance, Queen Mary, that then you struggle in finding the identity, your own individual identity. Don't. This is the team, your role within the team. We all work in a team. We can't do everything, you know, on our own. But it's as long as you shape it immediately after, you're going to be fine.
Thank you, Daniela. And yeah, I agree. It's this, and of course, we know that there are studies that show that for women, sometimes it's more difficult to say, I did this, than for men. But I think there is, like, you know, also a matter of personality. And all fairness, I did fail my first senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy application because I use we too much. And so the second time I came and say I, and the comments were, she was a little bit too proud of herself. So there's no winning with you. There is actually no winning. But I got it, so I left it like that. But yeah, so you do need to say I. Oh, someone else. Oh, Clodagh. Well, you know what it is, and you know, have to say I all the time. And on that note, I think we're getting towards the end, but I think something that has been particularly important here comes is the importance of networks. And I think sometimes it's very difficult. I see the work, I would like to rethink about the work network in a way, because we have, at least in my head, network was always a very difficult thing. It was the very difficult thing to do, to kind of trying to network with people, meet people. And actually, with the years, I learned that actually it's just making friends in your field, like getting to know people. And you will find, if you have never been in an educational conference in economics, we are far more friendly than the DC. I might be wrong, but we're far more friendly than the discipline government. Sorry, Daniela, I thought you were saying
that's absolutely fine.
Sorry.
Just
go.
another tiny terminology issue. Don't call it network. It's called collaborative leadership, guys. Okay, not network anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you want to change the name, call it collaborative
to
leadership in economics teaching, but no, it's essential. There is a literature about that. You know, those who work in business schools might be more familiar with that, but it's collaborative leadership. Not everybody has that skill. It's an actual skill, but you put the word leadership there, and it's a word of a difference.
Yeah, I agree, but I think just creating friendships or making friends in your career, I think that really just help. It kind of, when I know that I just kind of, actually, if I see Claude in London, we just can go for a coffee and talk a lot about work or something else. That actually feels good. Same with Danielle, etc., etc. Same with Albin. So we are getting to a close. I have a few announcements. First, thank you very much, everybody, for being here. I know how busy, well, at least busy for me, period, but we are still making it. Thank you very much, Tim. I was about to, if you are interested in this, and if you want to kind of have 2 full days walking about this, we have a mid-careers workshop. We still have few places available in the mid-careers workshop. So if you want, if you are interested, please join. This is co-organized with the Economics Network, ABIS, Aston University, etc., etc. There is not just a workshop, there are so many events around. If you are new to this, join either online, there is all the CETA workshops, community of practices going on. You might want to join first and see what's happening. Eventually you can lead. If you have ideas, I'm pretty sure Claudia Parma very open to hear your ideas, something that you might feel to lead, a new community of practice that you might want to create. Those are kind of good ways to start thinking and creating your own network and kind of thinking about what you would like to do further, and join conferences as well. So conferences, as I said, are very, very good places to meet people. I know it's more and more difficult to get funding for conference, but if you can join, even if you are not presenting, I think the first time I joined I wasn't presenting. I don't remember being presenting. I was just kind of, let me see what these people are talking about. And actually was a very good moment to meet people, etc. There is also online conference if you want to kind of try the water seat. I don't think CETA is happening this year, though online is going to be happening next year, but there are those ones as well. So do all that. Okay, so sorry, Claudia. There was this worth emphasizing CETA economics networks have no money, so we do everything for free. Yeah, exactly. So that's the whole thing. We are not getting paid for doing these things. We are here just because we like each other, and until we stop liking each other, well, I think we're gonna be here in a way. So I think that's also what keeps us going. I think that's all, everybody. So thank you very much.
About conferences, Stephanie, one second about conferences. If you are halfway through a paper, please don't be shy. The conference provides with feedback. Okay, so it's very, very helpful. So put yourself out there.
That's a very good point.
That was important. Yeah.
If you have ideas, there are conferences that allow you to share ideas and try to develop these things. We do that in suites as well. Sorry, Tim, everybody.
Just to say that if you have in progress work, you don't have to wait for a conference. You can present it at the Bees seminars or the many regional seminar series that are happening at the moment, or the communities of practice that exist. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunities.
I really hope that's true, because next week I'm in Bees and Tim actually convinced me to present something that I'm really just, is an idea rather than a developed thing. But let's see, I'll let you know. But thank you very much for joining, everybody. Thank you to our panelists, really insightful, has been very great, like panel and talking to you. Thank you for your time, and we'll catch up. Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Bye, 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 everybody.